the grandfather of Derek Willie, and this is his grandmother. Uh, Derek wants us to just kind of reminisce about our beginning, and we'll start after the war. I was in the Navy for a very short time, and I came back in 1946. And I decided that I wanted to go to college, and when I left home, I told my mom that I needed to go to college, and would she please press me on this issue when I came back. So I did not know Willie at this time. We met later on. And so while I was in the Navy away, not knowing Willie, I let her fill in what she was doing.
Well, my name is Willie Blanche Carter McCullough, and I was born in Fisher, Louisiana on March 13th, 1928. My father's name was Charles Augustus Carter, Sr. My mother was Clara Dickerson Carter. I have two brothers. One is 14 years older than I, Charles Augustus Carter, Jr. And my other brother was Albert Ray Carter, who was 12 years older than I, but he died about 12 years ago. So that's about all there is to my family. You know, up to Martha and Carla.
Oh, by the way, I didn't mention that my father's Luther McCullough, and my mom is Ella Virginia McCullough. Jenny, better known as Jenny. And she was born in 1895, I believe. And my father was born in 1885. 84, yeah, about 85. I was born in March the 18th, 1927, about the same month as Willie. So we're both Pisces, and I don't believe in that stuff, but they say we shouldn't be married. We've been married over 50 years, so you can't tell, it may not last. So. But we hope that it will.
We hope it will. Anyway.
So anyway, we had two children, Martha Faye and Carla Marie. And Carla lives locally here in Houston, and Martha lives in Georgetown, Texas. They have two children. Derek, of course, our grandson, and Carrie, our granddaughter, who is now married. So that kind of sums up. Should we go into how we met, or are we going to do that later?
Go into a little bit about, you've already told me when you were born, right?
Yeah.
Go into a little bit about what it was like growing up and where you grew up.
Oh, okay. I grew up in Alto, Texas, which is about 26 miles west of Nacogdoches. And growing up there, I had I had seven brothers, two sisters, and five brothers, one of which died, and I never knew him. Howell Lee was his name. And I was born there in Alto, Texas. In fact, my mom and dad died on the birthplace there in Alto. I was the seventh child, and I had one brother, Kent, younger than I, that died a few years back. So that boy and I grew up, we had 5 acres of land there, and we didn't have any money, but we had some land, and all of us used to plant potatoes and tomatoes, and I learned real early to hate farming. I never cared for farming, but it would put stuff on the table. And we had hogs and chickens and cows and a mule, and just like people had things, that's the way they lived in those days. And we'd even kill our own hogs for fresh meat, and also calves, of course. And I went to high school in Alto, Texas, and I still see friends from those early days. In fact, we've had our 50th high school anniversary.
Name your brothers and sisters.
Oh, my brother starting at the top is Thelma Clinton. Well, I'll just name their name. Thelma Breland, or better known as Dick. And then Marie, and then Marie Thomas, yeah. And Blackie, or better known, Charles Adrian, better known as Blackie. Then I was after Blackie, and I was Don. Then after me, did I leave somebody out? Then, oh yeah. Oh, Harlan was my oldest he was the oldest of the families, and he was the oldest, well, the oldest one. He was a boy. He was older than Thelma. And then Kent followed me, and he, like I say, he died. 2 are dead out of the family. 3 are dead, really. The one that died in infancy, Howell Lee, and then Harlan, the oldest, and the youngest, Kent, died. And that's pretty well. Oh, and I worked at the local picture show, running the projector and selling popcorn and all those things. In fact, I started my first job. I was 11 years old. I started sweeping out the theater, and what you would do is start at the very back rows and sweep everything forward: sacks, popcorn, candy wrappers, and occasionally money. And we got to keep the money. Maybe we get 50 cents. We'd find someone had dropped out of their pocket. So that learning how to run a projector helped me. I did that all through high school, through in the Navy, and then through college. And it really, very little amount of money that I made, but it was a big help in sustaining our lives. And going to college, that's where I met Willie, who happened to be the best friend of a girl who wrote me while I was in the Navy. And there was no big romance with Faye. She was just a good scout to write me, and it was delightful to get letters over there. So anyway, I had a friend, and I was going to get a date for my friend, and Faye, who was my good acquaintance. I was going to get another girl. She said, "Don't do that. My best friend will fix up your friend." That was Willie. So she went with this other guy. And so anyway, I won't get into the details, because anyway, we ended up, I never went with Faye anymore, and Willie and I started going together.
And I never went with the boy again. His name was Jack Eye.
Yeah. And who I went to the Navy with, and now lives in League City. He's a barber, a left-handed barber. I never trusted a left-handed barber. Anyway, so that gets. Oh, and I'll name a brother. We were all raised on the home place, which we sold, by the way, after my mom died. We sold the place, and it's still there today, of course.
Well, I was going to say, I was born in Fisher, and then this was shortly before the Depression started. And my daddy, during the Depression, was constantly out of work, and we sort of moved around from place to place, but wound up in Nacogdoches in 1932 when I was 4 years old. And because there was a college there, Mother and Daddy wanted my brothers and me to go to college. So Mother always said we stayed in Nacogdoches sort of on our nerve, because lots of times my daddy was out of work. But we did the best we could and made out, and both my brothers finished at Stephen F. Austin, and then I came along and I finished at Stephen F. Austin. But I went to high school during the war. The war started in December of my freshman year, and it was over in August after I graduated in May of 1945. And then I went to college at Stephen F. Austin, like my brothers did. And about a year later, I met Don. And then we went together for a little over a year, and then we got married in 1947. And then I graduated from college in 1948, and I was hired to teach there in Nacogdoches, and I taught at the junior high school for 2 years. And then Don graduated from college in about that time, or within that year. And then we moved to Houston, and Martha was born in 1950.
We had no children for about 4 years.
3 years.
3 years, well, yeah, a little over 3 years.
Martha was born in December of 1950.
In Nacogdoches.
In Nacogdoches, right. And then we came, but in the interim, we had bought a house in Pasadena, and we lived there for 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Carl.
really more altogether, 16.
No, we lived in that house.
Oh, in that house, yeah.
5 years, and Carla was born when we lived in that house. But
Well, I
we-
went to work for Champion Paper and Fiber in
Uh-huh.
Pasadena, but Swampy, Pasadena did. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then Carla was born in 1954, in July. And then when she was a year old, we moved from that little house to a larger house. And we lived there for 11 years. And then we moved out here. And Carla was in, was she in 8th grade?
Something like that.
7th or 8th grade. And Martha was in high school by this time. Martha went to Memorial High School for 1 year while they were building Westchester. And then she went to Westchester the next year and did her junior and senior years at Westchester. And
Well, she's
then-
the first graduating class. So
No.
you won second one, I guess.
And then Carla came along. Carla went to Memorial Junior High, and then she transferred to
Westchester.
Westchester High School and graduated from there. And then Martha went from Westchester to Stephen F. Austin for 1 year, and that's where she met Randy Woodley. And Carla, then, that was in 1970. No, 69. Martha graduated in 69. She married Randy Woodley in 1970. And Carla came along and went to Westchester, and she graduated in 1972. And then she went to Southwest
This is
Texas,
San Marcos.
which is
San
in
Marcos.
San Marcos. And that's where she met Randy Sandiford, whom she married in 74. And Martha married Randy Woodley in 1970. And then he had to go into the service. It was right after they married, wasn't it, that he went in?
Yeah.
It was, about 2 weeks after
In
they.
fact, 1 year of college at Stephen F. Austin, she was gone.
Uh-huh. And then she went with Randy to Alabama. Well, they were up in Texas, up in
Yeah.
Mineral Wells.
Yeah.
And then they moved to Alabama. And then Randy had to go to Vietnam.
So-
And Martha came back here and
Go
stayed
ahead.
with us while he was in Vietnam. And Carla was in.
She's going to college all this time, whatever college she
Yeah,
could find.
she went to college, and Carla was at home, and Carla graduated in 72.
Something like that.
And then she went to Southwest and met Randy Sandiford, and they were married in 1974. And
Then they moved back, and she
Then-
finished at the University of Houston.
Carla finished at University of Houston, and Martha went all over, but wound up graduating from A&M with Randy when Randy got his master's.
He got his master's.
And that was in 1975. And then they moved to Houston. And Carla and Randy lived here. And Carla went to University of Houston. And she graduated in 76 or 75?
One of those
77,
years.
77.
Yeah.
I think Carla graduated in 77, 76 or, no, 77. Carla graduated from college in 77.
But your
And-
mom and dad lived in an apartment over here. In fact, there's still apartments over
Uh-huh.
when they moved back from A&M
Uh-huh.
after they finished. And Martha was kind of at loose, your mom kind of at loose end. She was trying to get a job and couldn't. I said, look, what you need to do is use your teaching degree. And she signed up and they hired her immediately. in
Well,
Springfield.
she just did some substituting.
Yeah, that's right. But
And then they hired her.
And that, where she taught, it's amazing. It's a big new building being built out on Katy over here. That's the exact plot where her school was. It was team teaching.
The first
She
school.
She taught for 5 years, and that was unsuccessful. That is, the teaching method was
She
unsuccessful.
didn't teach there 5 years. She just taught there
Oh, that's
2
what
years.
her
And
last
then
2
she
years.
went to Spring Oaks,
Yeah, that's it.
which is over on Hammerley Boulevard. She taught there for 3 years. And then after Derek was born, she didn't teach anymore. And then they moved to Georgetown.
Yeah, that's kind of.
And Carla and Randy have always lived here in Houston.
Nacogdoches, did you have any jobs as a child?
Oh, yes. Well, the first job I ever had, I worked in a little grocery store called the Woodland Court. It was over on Mound Street.
It's now a video store. Still, we're pretty close to college.
And then I went to work at Kennedy's jewelry store, and I worked there, I guess, until just before we married.
Yeah.
And then I took a job after I graduated from college with a law firm because I couldn't get a teaching job. And then one day they just called me about the second month of school and asked me if I'd like to teach, and I said yes. And they hired me, and I taught there for 2 years in Nacogdoches at the Thomas J. Russ Junior High. And then Don got his degree, and we moved to Houston. And then Martha was born.
Tell me, both of you, about your experience in high school, if it was a memorable one, or if you enjoyed your high school years.
Yes, I enjoyed my high school very much. I received quite a few honors, and had a lot of friends, and most of my friends went to college with me.
You still see them, you might
I
mention
still
that.
see them. As a matter of fact, this weekend we're going up
They have a lunch bunch, they call
for
it.
me to have lunch with a bunch of my friends from high school.
My high school, it was enjoyable. I was never a real good student, but I really didn't finish high school. I left and joined the Navy.
Were you drafted?
No, I was not drafted.
To keep from being drafted.
Well, really, truly, I didn't want to go to school anymore. So I left and realized the grave error that I'd made. And in the Navy, that's when I committed to my mom, look, I need to finish school and go to college. And the fact is, what I really did, I ended up simply taking an exam for pre-exam for entrance to college, and I passed it. So I simply started at college without a degree, diploma from high school. And I was never a good student, but I learned how to study, and Willie was a very good student, so she was a big help to me. In fact, I say to people about my education that all I know is what I learned in the Navy, and Willie taught me the rest. So that's and I got something out of college.
Did you play any sports in high school?
Yes, I did. I played football for 2 years, and I was always blocking back in the backfield, and they called it blocking back those days. I really don't know what they call it these days, but and I made one touchdown in my career. I intercepted a pass and ran for a touchdown. By the way, in those days, in Alto especially, you played both defense and offense. You didn't get a break. Yep. I never got to leave the field. I just simply would be a defensive back. Mm-hmm. So that's my only claim to fame. I did intercept a ball and ran for a touchdown. So no other sports that I played though.
And you didn't play any sports in high school?
No, I didn't. I was not a sporty person.
Just the academics, gym and whatnot.
Gym. I took gym. I liked baseball. That was my favorite.
Tell me about your experiences in the Navy and during World War II, like what it was like and just the process.
Okay, well, the Navy was quite an experience, and I must say enjoyable. I was away from home and on my own. And I guess I went through boot camp in San Diego. Took about 8 weeks, 8 months, I guess it was.
Weeks?
I guess weeks it was. They were churning them out fast in those days. Anyway, we went through everything, calisthenics, we went to schools, everything. And I ended up being a passenger on the battleship in New Jersey. It's just like the Missouri, and to go overseas. And they were supposed to drop me off at Anahuac in the Marshall Islands. But they made a mistake. They sent me to Guam instead.
That's where you were.
And so they realized their error, so they sent a battleship for me. No, they really decided to ship me back to Anahuac. And on the day I was in the harbor, we heard that the war was over, that they had dropped an atomic bomb. We didn't know what that was. It said it was equal to 20,000 tons of TNT going off.
Oh.
And I said, that's just a rumor. It's all that is. But it turned out to be true. And I ended up in Anahuac, pretty close to Bikini, which was the first peacetime detonation of an atomic bomb on Bikini Atoll, which is about 170 miles from Anahuac. So that got me out of the Navy. They had to evacuate us because they didn't know what that bomb was going to do. This is peacetime, suddenly. They were doing a lot of experimenting. So I was sent home and came back to San Francisco, quite a town, San Francisco, full of Navy guys. The civilians there hate the Navy because they're a worry war. And I was discharged. I was sent back to Texas on a troop train, and Camp Wallace between here and Galveston, where it was a blimp base, a Navy base. I was discharged there.
What's the name of that town?
Oh, it's like Lamar, not Lamar, but I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, it was a blimp base, and that blimp hangar, the supports are still there today. You can see that, we see that every occasion when they go down that way. And they had a bus and it dropped us downtown Houston, and I met some people from Alto who were going home, and I paid them $5, I think it was, and got a ride with them back home. And I was glad to be home. Me and the Navy didn't see eye to eye. I didn't like the regimentation of the military.
You said you were in a battle one?
Hey, I was in a battle.
He didn't know
I was
it.
definitely in the battle. This is my experience on the battleship New Jersey. And I was working in the electric department way down, about 8 decks down. And they kept target practicing. That's what they did. They're shooting these big 18-inch guns off. And boy, it was a terrible noise. And when they did this for 3 days, and I'd come up for chow after end of the day, and cork from the wadding on these guns would just cover the deck. And they'd been shooting target practice. Well, one day I came up, the 4th day I came up, and I was told that we were in a war, in a battle. And it was Wake Island. And Wake Island, they just simply surrounded Wake Island and let the Japanese starve to death. Or they didn't bother invading, but they would take a shot at it every time they'd come by. So from that I got a battle ribbon.
All right.
And if
He
I
was
still
in
had
that.
that, I'd pass that along to you, but
He doesn't know what
I don't know what happened to it. I was so impressed with it, I lost it. So that was my battle. I came through it unscathed, though, Derek. I wasn't hurt.
That's good.
I might have fallen on that cork or something, but then I'd have gotten a Purple Heart, by the way. In fact, I knew a guy who was, he's a little older than I, but he was in Saipan, I think he was, and he was in the latrine. And these Japanese Zeros came by strafing everything, and they strafed that latrine, toilet in other words, and he bailed out of that thing and stubbed his foot on the rock and almost had a concussion. He wasn't hit by a bullet, but he got the Purple Heart for that. By the way, as we said, we lived in Pasadena, and after my short career with Champion Paper and Fiber, it was very short-lived. I decided I was not an industrial worker. I was fortunate enough to get on with Texaco Oil Company, and that itself brought the world of golf into my life because they had a country club, which is fairly close to where I worked in Pasadena, we lived in Pasadena. So that's where I play golf today, some 40 some odd years later. And that's kind of, I worked for them 35 years, and that has been, they had all these plans like these big companies do for savings plan they'll contribute to. So it's a very innocent beginning contributing to these savings plans, which we never really thought much about it, but it ended up giving us a fairly good retirement, that and other things. So that's the way my golf started anyway. And Willie, you might tell how you worked some at Matheson and
Okay.
some of the kids.
When he still worked at the paper mill, we just didn't have enough money. And so I applied at Matheson Chemical, which is out on the ship channel. And Martha was a baby, and I had a neighbor who would keep her for me. So I worked in a sort of secretarial position. I typed and kept records and things like that in the maintenance department. And I worked there about 3 years. And then when I was pregnant with Carla, I left. And then when Carla was born, I was going to go back, but after Carla was born, we decided we could make it without my salary, so we did. And I didn't go back to work until, let's see, Carla was born in 54, and I guess it was about 63 that I decided I wanted to go back to work. So I could have taught, but I needed some more education. So I went to the University of Houston for 2 semesters and got some more hours. And
Make her more marketable too.
and then I was hired in Pasadena, and I taught in Pasadena for 3 years until we moved out here. And we moved out here because they were moving your office from downtown to
well, I was already driving 14 miles, so this is going to add another 5 or 6 miles to it. And I told Willie, I said, and by the way, we had a house under, the plans had been drawn to build in Pasadena. So we canceled all those plans and just said, to heck with it, let's not do it, let's move to Spring Branch. And by the way, Willie was teaching in Pasadena at that time. She said, well, look, I have a friend, I'll just apply in Spring Branch. Son of a gun, she got the job. And that's when she started working in Spring Branch. And at one time, your mother, Martha, and also Carla were all working in Spring Branch.
We were all teachers.
All teachers at Spring Branch. But that's what caused us to move away from Pasadena and move out here. And we've been much happier out here for reasons I won't even bother to go into. But anyway, she taught for totally.
I taught 19 years. And now, let's see. Yeah, 19 years in Spring Branch.
A total of 24.
And then in was it 85? 85.
Yeah.
They offered the enrollment of the district had gone down, and you see they could hire 2 beginning teachers for what they paid me, and so they offered all older teachers this package, and I took the package and haven't worked since. I did a little substituting on a couple of years, but I quit that.
By the way, I didn't mention the development of my career with Texaco. I was transferred to Jefferson Chemical Company, which was in the antifreeze business. And I was in charge of the antifreeze production in the United States and in Canada, and the distribution of the product. We were a private labeler. That is, we'd go to some big company like Western Auto and say, look, we will do your private label stuff for you, put your label on it and sell it for you and move it for you. So I was in charge of that for many, many years, and had a real nice staff working for me. And it entailed extensive travel. And whenever I could, I'd take Willie with me when she was available to go. And we've done a lot of travel on the company business, quite a bit, into Canada and all over the United States. And but anyway, Willie, she said she got her lump sum retirement from Spring Branch. Also, Texaco, one of their options is a lump sum settlement. That is, rather than giving you a pension, they'll say, look, here's the money. You do what you will to make a living off it through investments and whatnot. And after I did retire, Willie retired before I did, a few months before I did, but to take care and know something about the money that I had, I went back to school to take a financial course, and that's where I learned how to manage options, stock options, selling and buying stock options. And I do that today, and it's been quite profitable and really a lot of fun. It keeps your mind working, and you read the paper a lot. Wall Street Journal is my crutch to know things about the financial world, and it's difficult, and most tedious task, but it's most enjoyable too, so. I kinda skipped 35 some odd years there, but kinda that's what we, oh, and Willie, so with her, oh, and by the way, your grandmother, after she had started teaching, they passed a law called the 401B, that for educators, they were allowed to invest several $1,000s, a percentage, with an annuity. And it deferred the taxes. That's a big thing. That deferred the taxes is a very big thing. Later on, they made the 401k, and the general public can do this also now. So, but teachers started it. So she accumulated quite a nice annuity fund from that. But without going into detail, it can be boring.
So what was your main job with Texaco?
Well, that was it. I was manager of distribution products.
It's mostly antifreeze.
Mostly antifreeze, yeah. I spent my last 2 years with Texaco, the main company, because the chemical division took over Jefferson Chemical Company totally and wiped out the company. That is, retired the name. And since I've retired, a company in Oklahoma became Brinkman, had bought the whole chemical effort by Texaco, lock, stock, and barrel.
Wow.
So I would have been out of a job had I not taken the retirement. Now I've been real happy retired, by the way. Real happy. I love working too, but
Yeah.
retirement is just really nice.
I bet. Tell me about some of the travels. I know you'll travel a lot.
Oh my goodness. Well, it would be like in those worst days, I would be in New York quite a bit because we had a lot of packing efforts in the New Jersey area. That is the eastern New Jersey, around Bayonne, New Jersey. They had a lot of these little independent packaging people. And then I'd come home and take off the following Monday to the West Coast. We packed in San Francisco. One organization that I belonged to that was most helpful in my work was an independent called the Independent Oil Compounders Association. IOCA, and Willie would go with me on those trips, and she got to know a lot of people. They'd go to New Orleans and really have a big, lavish banquet, and we stayed at the best hotels, and I got to know a lot of people, and obviously it was a lot of people that would help the company, and I really pursued their relationship because of what they could do for me, do for the company. So Willie went a lot to all those things, and I miss those days. They were fun, just a lot of fun.
And then, but we always took vacations when we could, and we'd usually just drive somewhere like to California or the East Coast or Florida or
Yeah.
New Orleans.
Well, our first trip abroad was 1976.
Then we went
Europe.
abroad. In 1976, we went to Europe,
Okay.
and we spent 3 weeks in England only. In England and Ireland and Wales and Scotland.
And we knew a family in Birmingham.
Shona McCullough, who is still our
Shauna.
friend.
You know Shauna? Yeah.
Her relatives all lived there, and they were nice to us when we went over. And so that was our first trip abroad. And then we came back, and we didn't go abroad again until
Oh, several years later.
about nearly 10 years later.
Yeah.
But we went to Mexico, and we went to Canada, and just wherever
Many
we
times.
felt like going, you know. But we love to travel, and I say we love to. We used to. We haven't done much lately. But
we're going.
anyway, then we've been back to Europe 3 more times, and the second time we went to Germany and
Austria.
Switzerland, and England.
Mhm.
Then the
Well,
third time,
Oh, yeah.
we went to England, and we stayed mostly in England.
And went back to Ireland, though.
Went to
second time.
Ireland. No, we didn't go to Ireland that time.
Oh, no, that's right. We
Yeah,
did.
or did
We did,
we
too.
did, that's when we
Yeah.
spent a week in
Sure,
Ireland.
when we went back through that brewery,
Mhm.
Guinness
Mhm.
beer, that's so tough to drink.
Yeah. And then,
The last one that was
and then about 6 years later, we went again. And this time we went to France and
Italy.
Italy, and we I love Italy.
Venice,
went
Venice,
to Venice.
the island, used to be a city-state. That's where they have the boats, you know, that they go up and down the canal. Oh, and
Went to Holland,
went to Holland, ended up in Amsterdam, yeah.
Amsterdam, and
Oh,
we,
back to Vienna. Vienna.
what did we back to?
I thought we did go through there, didn't we?
Uh,
Well, Rome, well,
We
Italy.
went to Rome, and,
Let's see, wait,
no, we've only been to Vienna one time.
okay, we didn't go back to
Uh-uh.
that.
But anyway.
Did we go from, Germany clear to Amsterdam?
Yeah,
That's
we
something.
came from France, no, came from Italy, through Switzerland, into
Oh, yeah,
Germany,
Switzerland. I
and
knew.
then to Holland.
Okay, that'd be good,
And there's still lots of places we want to see. And then this past year, we took a cruise, or this year, we
Yeah.
took a cruise to Alaska.
Is that your first time in Alaska?
Uh-huh. We flew to Vancouver, British Columbia, and caught the boat there, and came back in about a week later.
yeah. The Amistad.
The
is
Amistad.
Quite a luxurious ship.
And then we flew down to San Francisco, and Ginger and Steve Miller
And saw
met
your
us.
sister in her dovetail.
And we stayed there about 4 days.
4 days.
Saw Carrie and Doug, and then we came home. And we haven't been anywhere else this year, but we
We planned.
hope to go again before long,
You've been to Canada a lot, haven't you?
several
yeah.
times.
Yeah, Winnipeg.
We've been to every state across the border. You know, the border between
The
the United
province,
States
yeah.
and Canada. We've been to every one
Wow.
across there.
Now
Uh,
we can include
Now,
Alaska.
we haven't been to Nova Scotia and those, the
Prince
islands,
Edward
the
Island.
island, Prince Edward Island and those places. But we've been to all the contiguous states of Canada.
Yeah,
from-
well, Ottawa, went to Ottawa, Canada.
Well, from east
Winnipeg.
to west.
Yeah.
And it's nice and fun.
Tell me how you got started doing volunteer work for the Bushes.
All right, I was always interested, but I never did anything about it. And so I had a friend who, when they had the economic summit here in Houston, when Mr. Bush was president, and this was in 1990, wasn't it?
Mhm.
She knew somebody who would let us work. So we went down and worked in the economic summit. And that way I got to know some people, some ladies who, you know, were instrumental in his affairs. And I worked the entire economic summit. And I got to see, Mitterrand and the guy from Canada and one from Italy and one from, and Margaret Thatcher.
Was it Trudeau at Canada at that time?
No,
It wasn't, it
Trudeau.
wasn't.
Anyway, I saw all of them, just saw them. I didn't meet them or anything like that. And so then in 1992, when Mr. Bush decided to run for president again, I was asked to come down and help, and so I did. And it's always been just a volunteer thing, you know, like a day or two here and a day or two there. But during the convention, which was held here in Houston, I had some pretty lush jobs. I worked out at the Astrodome every week, one day, and then during the actual convention, I worked downtown at the Hyatt Hotel, and then I worked over in the Greenway Plaza.
Mhm.
No, the Galleria
Galleria,
area.
yeah.
And then I got to know this woman whose name is Margaret Vogel. And Margaret, after the Mr. Bush lost, we were all just sick, you know, that he lost. But anyway, I saw her several times, and she'd always say, I still work for Mr. Bush, and if I ever need some help, I'll call you. And I said, okay. And so one day she called and said, could I come?
Now, this is the inner circle, people that are around him personally.
Mhm.
And she was so delighted to get
I
the
was so
chance.
delighted to get that chance, because I had never even seen Mr. Bush. And so she invited me to come down and help, and so I go down. I went down one day a week for, I guess, about 6 or 8 months, and they were desperate for help and asked if anybody come another day? And I said, yeah, I could come on Thursday. So I go Wednesday and Thursday. And I just do things like addressing envelopes and stuffing mail and opening mail and just whatever needs to be done.
Willie's far too modest. The thing is, she was chairman of the English department when she worked. And here they've got an English teacher who can spell and proofread, who'll work for nothing. So she's what makes quite a contribution. I think she's entirely too modest.
And so, because of this, we've been invited to, like the opening of the library, when they actually did the groundbreaking of the library. We went to the opening of the library. We've been to his home. And,
a couple of times. They
a
have
couple
party,
of times.
Very intimate little party.
Last night, I went to a party that he gave for all of us volunteers.
And with a name like Willie, he knows her name.
And General Scowcroft was there, and Mr. Bush. They were the only men. The rest were women, and we just had a real nice time and a nice meal.
So that's her hobby as well as something she really enjoys doing.
So would you consider yourselves pretty good friends with the Bushes?
And not really. I'm acquaintances, let's say.
Remember, he's got thousands of people.
He has to limit his friendships. Like when we had our 50th wedding anniversary, we did not invite them because they would not have come. Because they say it would take away from us.
Would it be his part?
It would be his part.
Everybody wants
not
to see
ours.
him.
Not ours.
So
he declined.
Yeah.
So I just didn't even invite him.
But he sent us the nicest picture with, he wrote a personal note on it, which is in the den there. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
And he's very, very nice, but he does think about people like this. So no, I wouldn't say that I'm close friends, but he knows me, knows my name.
And that's all
that's
required.
important.
So what are some of your hobbies?
Well, one is, of course, I thought I wanted to do painting. And by the way, when Will and I both retired, we both took courses at the community college. She took flower arranging and several things. And I took painting, drawing and painting and that sort of thing, a couple of courses. And then I did in fact paint some pictures that you've seen around the house here. And I'm sure you will agree that I should take up photography.
Okay. Very good painter.
But anyway, what happened with the painting bit, I got that blasted keyboard, and that was so captivating that that's all I do when I'm not playing golf. Then I'm sitting with Willie having some wine. So those are my hobbies. Well, the golf and the painting, I don't do it anymore, but the keyboard, I guess. In fact, in my golf, by the way, I made 2 holes in 1, and I made 4 eagles. And the first hole in 1 was so intriguing. In fact, I came home and I walked out and said, "What does every golfer want to do?" She said, "A hole in 1." I said, "I did it! I made a hole in 1." And I was so inspired, I wrote a poem, which I won't bother reading. But then the second one, I misplaced the article in the paper and I lost it. So my enthusiasm waned on the second one.
But he does have 2 holes in 1.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And we just have a good life and enjoy it and enjoy each other and enjoy what we do, what we don't do.
Would you do you feel like your life has been successful or that you've achieved most of the goals that you've set out for yourself?
I think so. I really do. I never really wanted to be much except a wife and a mother, and I guess that's.
I can't really say that either one of us had goals per se.
Yeah.
In other words, if we're going to do this, that, and so forth, things just as we met challenges, we would either turn away from it or approach it, and it's just kind of been built on happenstance, but very
Successful.
very successfully. That has produced happiness, and that's what it's about.
Yeah.
And by the way, any kind of wealth that Willie and I may have is absolutely nothing. The most valuable thing we've got is our relationship. We seem to love each other, or at least we both seem to be, at least I am, committed to our union and conscious of the welfare of each other.
And our children.
And we fight. We have, it's not one of these ideal, unbelievable relationships. It's based on good, hard fighting. So, but we dearly love each other.
And we thoroughly enjoy our children and our grandchildren. Love seeing them.
Mhm.
Would like to see more of them.
Yeah.
Well, in closing, is there any kind of advice, because we both lived very productive lives and experienced a lot, is there any kind of advice that you want to give to people that may see this 50 to 100 years down the road?
Oh, well, I don't know. I guess just keep trying.
Well, the only thing I can think of, I guess the basis for reaching a happy life is to know yourself, your weaknesses, and certainly we all have them, and then you're able to make the best of your weaknesses and be quite successful, by the way. So just have faith, try to do right with the good Lord, and He'll do right with you. I know that's very superficial advice. Now, really, I guess I'm not big on advice because each person has to work these things out themselves. And anyway, any advice that I would give certainly has no strings attached, no obligations, because inevitably people work out their own problems, and just hopefully they'll have the equipment and the tools to do that.
I think you just need to give something every day.
Yeah, you do.
Give something to somebody or something or some cause. You need to give of yourself to something. And that's I guess you'd call that my philosophy.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I think the contribution is important, like her volunteering. We haven't been as close to the church as we should have been. We've kind of drifted away from that. We hope to get back into that. But one thing that I'm doing that I hope to pursue is with this keyboard. I love it so that on one occasion I've played at a rest home. Randy Sandifer's mother. I played at the rest home out there, and I've developed a little program. Well, I want to expand that and do more of that work, just to call them up and go out there and play, if nothing else, just to play for an hour or so. And the only thing I would require is that they turn the TV off so that I can do it.
And he's fixing to do that in alto.
Yeah, I'm about to do it in alto, and so I'm developing a program now. And by the way, I guess advice: be active, have interest. It'll keep you young. It really will. And if you're not interested, make yourself good, and then you'll get to like it, see that it's real joy to be had by planning things, doing things, going places, and don't just vegetate.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah, that's not what retirement's all about.
No,
Oh,
it
that's
isn't.
right.
Well, give him a kiss.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
I guess a prolong.
I get, well, whatever it is.
Becomes something.
A finale.
Finale.
Yeah, finale. I had mentioned to Derek that I was playing the keyboard, which I play by ear, by the way, I no music, and I'm confessing that I'm guessing on some of these notes, but I'm 80% of the time I'm right. And I told him I hope to go to these homes, rest homes and whatnot, to play this keyboard. And I'm working up a program now to do that. And what I'm going to do is simply play 3 songs that I may be playing there. These are kind of peppy tunes. I don't know where these old folks can keep up with this or not. But nonetheless, I'm about to, let's see. I'm going to play 3 songs from a pretty lively beat. Years ago, there was a little fictitious town up east in Rhode Island, in fact, and it was called Winsaki, and a little college, Winsaki School. And a significant part of this about Winsaki is they had a football team. They had never won a game. So they got together and decided they would write a song, a pep rally, if you will, a pep song, which they did. It was called Knuckle Down Winsaki. Knuckle down. You can win Winsaki if you knuckle down. So I'm going to use that beat, which is, oops, that ain't gonna come in with a lot of trumpets. And I'm gonna play 76 trombones also, and also Midnight Blue. Now the Midnight Blue and the windsocket's gonna be in one of these kind of a bell type thing, but I'm gonna put the trumpets in the trombones in that thing. So here we go. Midnight Blue. Now we're going to finish this with more orchestration and harmony, wind socket. That's it. Chop off the end of it. And let's do this. Okay, well, it's 10 seconds, so let me get over here. Okay, by the way, are we on? Yeah. By the way, something we failed to mention is.
We've just reviewed
Derek-
this
Yeah.
and realized that we didn't say anything about our grandchildren.
That's right. But one thing I want to finish with Derek is that he's an aspiring pilot, by the way. He's about to do cross country to get his pilot license. And I'll let Willie mention, we failed to mention Karen and Colin. Tell him about his swimming ambition. Colin.
Well, I don't know what his ambition is.
Oh, his ambition is, he's a big swimmer. He
He-
spends a great deal of his time swimming.
Yeah, Colin is quite a good swimmer and has won a lot of medals and all sorts of things for his swimming. He's Carla's oldest child, and he was born in 1982.
Yeah.
And he's a junior or sophomore. Junior. He's a junior in high school right now, and he's a delightful boy. And we're really, really
And by
proud
the way,
of him.
Karen has also begun to take up swimming, and it seems to be quite good.
And Karen is their daughter. She's about 3 years younger than Colin. And she's just delightful. She spent the night with us last night. And I can't imagine our not mentioning either one of them. But
We did.
we did.
Now, I'll tell you what to do, Derek. See that fade button there on the side? Just hit fade. Oh, Willie, you want to say something now?
Well, I want to say something about Carrie and Doug,
Oh,
Derek,
okay, go
too.
ahead.
And Carrie Ann, you know, is our oldest grandchild. We're really proud of her. She's in college now and married and happy and married to a nice guy, and we love them both.
And about the only big difference in the Willie family since Carrie left is they have acquired a cat, Willie's cat, Toby. He is taken over there, up there like he has here.
Uh-huh.
So.
And he's a delightful thing. And also Derek, he's so sweet.
Oh, he's there. He's a.
Um,
And one of these days you might be riding on a plane. He's the pilot.
he's the pilot.
Go up and say
right.
hi to him.
We're really proud of him and Carrie and Colin and Karen. They're delightful grandchildren. We just feel so proud of them, all of them.
And we're proud of our son-in-laws, the two Randys, Randy Sandiford and Randy Woodley. They fitted the family. Fitted the family.
They couldn't have picked better. We couldn't have done a better job
That's right.
ourselves if we had picked for them. And we're sorry we didn't just.
Not overdue. Okay, let's have a
Okay.
fade on that,
All
and
right.
then hit your button off button. Okay, it's fading now. Now hit your off button.